to follow up if you have any questions. So I want to, one thing, we are recording this today, so if anyone has to jump off early, or if you want to reference it when you're doing your application later in the month, you can do that. Let me go ahead and share my screen and I can get started on our presentation today. Let's see. All right, is everyone able to see that? Okay. Great. All right, so our agenda for the call today, first I'm going to give you some background on the Great American Defense Communities Program, what's different in 2022, the nomination and award timeline, how to apply, and then some information about what the selection committee is looking for. And then we'll come back together as a group for some questions. So I'm going to just kind of dump a lot of information to you up front about the program and the timeline for 2022. And then we can follow up with some questions that are specific to different communities. All right, so program background. The Great American Defense Community Program, which we short to GADC, was developed by the Association of Defense Communities in conjunction with the House and Senate Defense Communities Caucuses, I believe back in 2015, to recognize communities who are exceptionally committed to improving the lives of service members, veterans, and their families. So what we've been able to do for quite a few years now is really highlight the work that communities are doing, and this is really helpful because we found throughout our ADC is that we have a lot of communities that are doing really incredible things that are have really unique programs that other communities can learn from and oftentimes want to duplicate. And so they'll come together at our conferences and discover some of these programs, but we really didn't have a program that was really centered on highlighting the work that they were doing. And so that is what, that started the idea for the Great American Defense Communities Program. And we've actually been able to travel to a lot of these communities. At this point, we've had over 35 defense communities have been recognized. We travel to these communities, we do presentation ceremonies, and we try oftentimes to do filming in the communities as well. So we're able to put together stories that really showcase and highlight the good work that the communities are doing. And we select 5 communities a year. When we first started back in 2015, I think we were doing 10 communities in the year, and that proved to really be too much. We weren't able to go as in depth with each community as we wanted to. We weren't able to produce videos about each community, and we weren't able to, write articles about each community because there was just too many. So we moved it over. We did that for a couple of years where we had 10 communities, and then we moved it to 5. And that seems to kind of be the magic number that we're able to have really dig deep into some of the programs and the people that are making a difference in their community and share it on a larger screen at our conferences. So one thing that we can touch on at the end is that now that we've been in the program for 7 years, we've had some communities that were awarded the award early on, like in 2015, 2016, that really the program wasn't as strong and as had the reach that it does now. And so a lot of those communities are wondering if they're able to reapply now that it's such a different program. And we've had a couple repeat communities already, because it doesn't really seem fair when what they got in those first couple of years was so much smaller than what it is now. So that's often a question that we do get. So what's new in 2022? USAA is once again ADC's partner for the official sponsor of the program. And they have been our partner since the very beginning. They're very involved in the program and in the selection of the communities. And we have an opportunity in 2022 because it is I think it's their 100th anniversary, but they have a really big anniversary going on this year. USDA does. And so their theme for the year is innovation. And we are hoping, we want to tie our GADC theme to innovation as well. So we're really interested in telling stories that programs, initiative, people that are harnessing new ideas to improve quality of life for service members and their families. And I think when we think about innovation, we often our mind goes to tech, and it goes to like STEM programs and, things that are around technology. And while we do love to see those programs, I think that we want to expand it because we can have innovation in a number of different ways. For instance, last year we covered a program in Georgia that was a farmer's market that was going to close because of COVID, and the community was really the only place in the region where you could get very fresh vegetables, farm to table. And so they decided to put together subscription boxes during COVID, and it was actually a soldier from one of the bases that started that, and so that people could still have access to that quality food. So when you think about innovation, don't necessarily limit it to technology and STEM programs, engineering, things in your community. It can really, we're just looking for programs that are unique and that are solving problems that your communities may be facing. And the program will culminate with a reception and a special programming at IAF Installation Innovation Forum in Phoenix, Arizona this November. And so if you've been with ADC for a while, you might remember that we typically, for a while, we were doing the Great American Defense Community Reception and Showcase at the National Summit. But because of COVID the past couple of years, we've had to switch a bit our scheduling. And so for the 2021 program, we culminated it in the fall at IAF. And so we're going to be doing that again. So we'll be launching the program at the National Summit, which is in March, and culminating it at IAF in the fall. Okay, so this is what I was just kind of talking about, but our nomination period is open. It's been open for 9 days now. It's going to close at the end of January. So we have a little bit of time left to get your applications in. Luckily, the application form is really simple. So we try to keep this the form simple so that it doesn't overwhelm anyone who's trying to nominate a community. 2022, the GADC nominations, or the 2022 GADC communities are notified in mid-February. So that's when you can expect to find out about the decision. And that's just, the communities, and we ask them to kind of keep it on the down low until early March. So early March is when we have the official announcement, the press release. A press release for each community will be distributed at the local and national level. And then we'll launch the 2022 class, introduce them at the National Summit, which is March 7th through 9th. And that is, we'll put together like a quick video to introduce the communities there, but the summit is not the big event where we are really digging deep into the communities that are being recognized. This is just the launch. So then April through November, ADC will be, we hold a number of virtual events throughout the year that we'll be asking for our GADC communities to participate in. We will travel to as many of the Great American Defense communities as possible to take part in a recognition ceremony, and I'll work with the communities to determine, what recognition ceremony works best for them. We typically have a flag that we present, and we give some remarks. Usually it's an existing kind of military affairs program in the communities, but we've also had some communities put together a whole celebration just based on the recognition. So we have travel to the communities, and then myself and Chris and some other folks from ADC will also be kind of mining for ideas for content. So we'll be asking you about different programs in your community, trying to figure out which would be the best one to put together a a short film on. So we usually do about like 5 to 7 minute kind of pieces on different programs in our GADC communities, and we'll also be writing a number of articles for America's Defense Communities magazine. And then November, as I mentioned, the reception and conference at Installation Innovation Forum is where we will showcase all that work that we've been doing April through November. So we'll show our videos of the recognized communities, and the magazine will be published for the communities, and then we at the conference. And we also typically work the GADC communities into some of our programming at the conference. So you might be asked to speak on a panel, or to have a session, formed around something that your community is doing. So how to apply? So you apply at defensecommunities.org/GADC. Read the form instructions and information that is at the top of that page. And midway down the page is where the nomination form starts. So the nominator must be an ADC member. So that's important. Most ADC, most defense communities in the US are members of ADC, but you have to make sure that the organization that the person who is nominating is one of our members. Otherwise, you will be disqualified. So we asked for some information about the ADC member, and then your member organization. And then we just have a couple different parts to this form. So we have the contact information, the community or overview, where you'll just give a background of your region and the installations that your community supports. We have the community support section. So this is where we're asking for some specific examples of programs, initiatives, organization in your community that support the military and improve quality of life. Then we have the last section, which is community alignment with our priorities. And so this is where you would include a brief description of an innovative program in your community that tackles challenges that to improve the lives of service members and families. So the first two, for the community support, we're looking for you to kind of highlight 3 initiatives in total on the form, 2 programs that about community support, and then maybe pick the one that you think is the most innovative or the most innovative thing about your community, and mention that in the last section. But we're looking for specific examples of programs, measures, initiatives that are taking place in your community, so that we can point to this is a fabulous program on supporting military spouses. And so we do want some kind of concrete programs mentioned on this form. If there's websites, you can link to those too, so that we have a really good idea of the communities that are applying and what's happening in their region. So what are we looking for? So GADC is a military quality of life program. So we are not necessarily looking for an in-depth, white paper about some P3, P4 efforts, infrastructure efforts that are going on in your community. Really think about and I'll have a couple examples at the end of this presentation. But if you're familiar with the program, you've seen the videos that we've produced, you've seen our magazine, and for GADC, we're kind of looking at the human interest side of things. So we have plenty of other content that really deals with some of the really technical, infrastructure, roads, all that sort of stuff that are the innovative things that are happening there in our defense communities. But here we're kind of looking for, what might be on a local news, what they would cover if there was, a new park that's opened, or like I mentioned before, maybe it's a program to help military spouses, kind of things like that are a little bit more the human interest side is what we're looking for to cover with the GADC program. We're looking for an alignment with the 2022 theme and our agenda, which specifically the theme of innovation. And then we also, a couple of things is, the GADC program is it's public relations program. So we are depending on the communities that we recognize to be able to support what we want to do. So ADC wants to come and visit the community. Are you able to put together an itinerary for ADC representatives, help us, help us find hotels in the region, things like that. So, do you have the bandwidth to do that, to help us put together kind of a schedule of events for when we're in town? Can your community support publicizing the recognition? Can you distribute that press release and get some local news coverage on it? We'll do what we can from the national side, but it's always for the local news, we depend on the communities to spread the word. Can your community help coordinate a video shoot? So I'll be reaching out to the communities and asking about once we identify what the best program is to cover for the shoot, we need people to interview. Will someone be able to kind of help us be a point person so that we can get the content that we need, and that we can conduct interviews while we're in town? So that one's important to point out, because we do want our communities to understand that there is kind of a level of engagement here and you have to be ready for it. We have in the past had communities that, while we enjoyed showcasing them, we weren't able to go film there because we couldn't get a shoot together. Maybe we couldn't get a local event planned. So really your level of engagement kind of dictates how successful this program is going to be for you. So I do like to point that out, because sometimes we'll have communities say, oh, maybe we'll wait a couple more years until we'll be able to support it a little bit better. So that's just something to point out so that you know what to expect. So past GADC communities, like I said, we have over 35 communities that have been recognized at this point. So here's just a couple links that you can look at the videos that we've done for past communities, and so you can see what types of stories we are looking for. So on here, we have the QR code to go to the application form, but it's also front and center on our website. And so it's an easy form, as I mentioned. All right, so that's the presentation that we have today. So I guess any questions? I know that was a lot of information, but I wanted to get through it before we got to questions.
I have a quick question, just to clarify. So in part 3, you want 2 community support programs, and then part 4 would be like a third program that's more innovative. Is that what I understood?
Yeah, so it would be kind of think about what program you think aligns the most with the concept of innovation. And I would put that as your example for that question. And then for the other 2, just some other community programs that you have. For instance, we have, let's see, I'm trying to think, you have like a TAPS program in your community, we think that's great. A lot of other communities have that. So really think about what's unique to your community. Like the farmers market kind of example that I gave, that seemed to be really, even though there's farmers markets everywhere, it seemed to be really specific to that region in Georgia, because it was like the only farmers market in like the Tri-County area. So think about what really also kind of sets your community apart. And if you have a program that's, say it's a really San Diego program or something like that, maybe, or something that has to do with like your local landscape, I would consider that for the kind of innovation question. Does that help at all?
Yes, thank you.
So there's a couple questions that are coming up in the chat. Do you want support letters from the basis and community? We actually don't. So we had that as part of the application form a couple in the past. And we found that we weren't really looking at them, to be honest, because every community was able to get one for the most part. And we were a lot more focused on the kind of the narrative of the programs that are in your region. So I think that's the part to really focus on. And as for pictures, no, we don't want pictures, but you can link in, you can link to websites in your responses within the narrative, and we can, see photos there.
Grace, this is Marcel. If I can ask a question about that tax program one.
Yeah.
The tax program was actually one of the things we were going to highlight, because we don't have the active duty support that a normal active duty base would have. And so the community has really stepped in and is a partnership of about 10 different organizations that support the tax program here. And it was so creative that one of the people was recognized by Money Magazine in Wells Fargo as a money hero. So do you think that's not going to be sufficient for the application, or should I steer away from that and focus on other programs?
No, I mean, I knew as soon as I said like that example that someone would say they were planning on putting that. But what I mean by that is, you know, there's a lot of these programs where basically every base is going to have like a chapter or something like that. And so when if that's your strongest program, certainly write about it, but write about it from the angle of why it's the strongest. You know, what is the differentiator to other programs? And then another thing that's important too is when you're writing this, you know, ADC, we're coming at it from the community perspective. So what you put forth should really show a level of engagement and support and effort from the community side versus the base side. So a lot of times we'll have communities write, you know, we do a breakfast, you know, maybe like the readiness center at the base is really strong and has some really innovative programs, but that's the military side, you know, that's the installation side. So really we want to show partnership and we want to show the community stepping up to support. So make sure what you're putting forth in your narrative and in the programs that you're talking about are coming at it from the community side.
Thanks, Grace. That's actually really helpful. And that is the thing that's unique about ours. It's not the base that's doing this, it's the community that's doing the program, right? That's very helpful. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? And then if there's anything that's like really specific to your community that you feel is not, you know, for the good of the group, feel free to email Chris and we can talk to you directly about it. Yes, we are going to post this recording. So we'll probably just post it on the webpage. And it's for any other communities that weren't able to join. So you'll be able to access it and we can post the slides too. All right. Any other questions? One thing I'll mention, I know I did say this during the presentation, but definitely look at our past, go to our YouTube, ADC's YouTube, and look at there is a series on there that's Great American Defense Communities. And then those are all the videos for the communities that we've profiled in the past few years. And so we basically picked the program that we thought was the most unique from that community and profiled it. So that'll give you a good idea of what types of programs we're looking for and the stories that we like to tell through the program. So that, you know, to do that extra level of research is, I think, really beneficial because you'll understand what we're trying to go for. And then we also look at our America's Defense Communities magazine. So there's a link at the bottom of the GADC page on our website that shows last year's magazine. And so pull that up and read about our GADC communities as well, because that gives an idea of the types of programs that we're winning programs essentially from our communities. All right, we got a couple more. If we submitted in the past, is there? Yes, so as far as submitting in the past, we don't necessarily have a debrief available, but I would definitely, so we definitely really encourage you to submit again. So there might have been some other, you know, reasons why your community wasn't selected that year, but you can certainly submit again. And while I wouldn't recommend putting forth every single program exactly as you did in the previous years, you can certainly, because I would imagine that the programs that you put forth are still your strongest ones. So you can definitely still use the same programs. It wasn't, you know, there might have been some other reasons why your community wasn't selected. And it probably didn't just come down to the programs. So feel free to submit again. You know, there's only 5 communities that we're allowed to for each year. So a lot of it is just sometimes we do have to cut some communities that are, you know, we're really close to getting it, but we just couldn't that year because we can only do 5. Our veteran initiatives in the, yes, so that's a really good question. Veteran initiatives, I know I kept on saying military family, just because when I say military family and veterans, sometimes it gets to be a really long statement, but yes, veteran initiatives we are interested in. So we definitely, we include that as well. So that, you know, if you have anything for veterans or military spouses and active duty service members, we want to hear about it all. All right. Yeah, so those are some great questions. Any others? And then just on the debrief, so we do offer, if your community isn't selected, we can offer a call after the nomination process is over to kind of, you know, give you some tips for next year's or next steps, so that we can do that. Okay, so I think that's it then. Those were all the questions in the chat that I see. And like I said, you can also just email us too, if any come to mind. But the form is pretty basic, and I think you'll be able to work your way through it pretty easily. And our the deadline again is January 31st, so the end of the month. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this call. This was a really big group, so that's exciting. We usually have usually about 10 less. So it looks like this year we might have a lot of communities applying. So, but we're super excited to showcase all of the communities for 2022, and because this is a really good year to do it, because the past couple of years we have had to kind of adjust and we're still adjusting for COVID as well. But for instance, we really do want to travel to every community this year, which we haven't been able to always do in the past. So we're making that a priority to safely travel to our 2022 GADCs this year. So great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to email us.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you, Grace.
Very helpful.
Right, thank you. Looking forward to reading your applications. Bye, everyone.